This is wrestling's greatest moments.
Hey now, wrestling fans. It's time for another episode of Wrestling's Greatest Moments. Ric Flair's legendary career spanned 5 decades. Consequently, the Nature Boy battled the greatest stars from each decade, including some epic feuds. Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at Ric Flair's most legendary feuds, the top 10. Before we get started though, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. The criteria: keep in mind that these are Ric Flair's 10 greatest feuds, rather than his 10 greatest opponents, although many of the wrestlers on the list are both. We measure Flair's feuds by how long they lasted and how intense they were. For example, many of the feuds here were revisited over 2 or more decades, a testament to their longevity. Other feuds, such as Flair vs. Terry Funk, were epic, but didn't last long compared to the ones on our list. Number 10. Carrie Van Eric. The Van Eric family's quest for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship was a frequent storyline in world-class championship wrestling, with Carrie's many matches with Ric Flair symbolizing this title hunt. To be fair, they also battled Harley Race, but Flair held the belt for much of the early 80s, and Carrie's clashes with Flair were always top draws. Although David Van Eric was reportedly booked to beat Flair for the belt prior to his untimely passing, Carrie's battles stood out and also led to side angles. Whether it was the legendary 1982 Christmas cage match that led to the Freebirds heel turn, or Flair allegedly putting a bounty on Carrie Van Eric, which led to Carrie fighting other wrestlers, their feud made for many great matches involving Flair, as well as other wrestlers. Van Eric's title win over Flair at the 1984 Parade of Champions was a swan song in their feud. There would be more matches after Carrie's title win, but the feud had peaked. Carrie's unreliability reportedly shortened his NWA title reign, and World Class eventually left the NWA. Number 9. Terry Funk. Terry Funk's 1989 feud with Ric Flair was incredibly short compared to the other feuds on our list, but like a supernova, its brilliance earns it a spot on this elite list. Funk, who on paper was all but retired, although as fans saw during the 80s, 90s, and even 21st century, retirement was always a fuzzy term for the Funker, challenged Flair to a world title match. Flair's refusal, incorrect explanation that Funk, who was working as a color commentator in WCW, wasn't even in the top 10, lit a fire under the ever-volatile wrestler, leading to a brutal attack on Flair. Funk pile-drive Flair onto a table, apparently ending his career. Flair returned, of course, after a well-deserved vacation to sell his kayfabe injury, but Funk was just getting started. Terry Funk nearly ended Flair's career a second time when he choked him out with a plastic bag. The shocking angle reportedly led to TBS owner Ted Turner chewing out WCW executive Jim Herd. The feud ended with a perfect match, a brutal I Quit match where Flair brutalized Funk and forced him to give up. Number 8. Randy Savage. The Macho Man's war with Ric Flair over the WWF Championship got personal when Flair claimed that Savage's manager Elizabeth had been the Nature Boy's girlfriend before Savage, with Flair taunting Savage that the lovely Elizabeth was damaged goods. Doctored photos by Flair only added to the outrageous claims, making the WrestleMania 8 match a must-see. Flair and Savage were in their prime, and it showed in the ring, while Savage defeated Flair for the belt and exposed Flair's claims as phony. This feud was too good to end at Mania. Consequently, Savage and Flair battled into the summer, with Flair regaining the title thanks to help from Razor Ramon. WCW knew a winner when they saw it, which led to Savage and Flair renewing their hate fest, this time with Miss Elizabeth kayfabe betraying the Macho Man for Flair. Their matches proved a strong alternative for WCW fans who were bored with Hulk Hogan. Number 7. Harley Race. How big was Ric Flair's 1983 feud with Harley Race? Consider this. The storyline of Ric Flair's quest to regain the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, aka a Flair for the Gold, proved that promoters could tap into a lucrative revenue stream by promoting wrestling at arenas that broadcast shows on closed-circuit television. While closed-circuit TV wrestling broadcasts had been done before, Starrcade established it wasn't just feasible, it could be profitable. Naturally, the card had to have a top main event. And the culmination of Ric Flair's feud with Harley Race had it all. Race winning the NWA strap under questionable circumstances, Flair's dogged pursuit of the title, and Race's subsequent bounty on Flair that seemingly ended Ric's career when Bob Orton Jr. and Dick Slater took him out. Flair's shocking comeback in the steel cage match where everything would be resolved was booking 101, but the execution was next level. The feud was perfectly paced, keeping fans engaged for months until they couldn't wait to see its conclusion where Flair regained the NWA title. Flair vs. Race was a staple of the NWA circuit, but this feud was their best program together and a key element in wrestling's expansion from the territory era to the national era. Number 6. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair were the standard bearers for the WWF and the National Wrestling Alliance during the 1980s. But regrettably, fans never got to see them clash when the two promotions were fighting for dominance. That changed when Ric Flair jumped to the WWF and a lengthy feud seemed like a no-brainer. Sadly, it never happened other than occasional skirmishes. The WWF left considerable money on the table, with rumor having it that WWF officials were disappointed by house show numbers for Flair vs. Hogan matches. WCW didn't drop the ball when Hogan jumped there, and he was immediately booked against the Nature Boy. Despite the Hogan-Flair rivalry being lopsided during the early encounters, it was still exciting and had an epic feel. The feud would be revisited several times, including during Hogan's shocking run as the leader of the New World Order, later clashes during WCW's final days, and dare we remind fans, their later matches in TNA wrestling. Number 5. Wahoo McDaniel. Feuds can make a wrestler, and in Ric Flair's case, his feud with Wahoo McDaniel solidified him as a top heel in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. As noted in our video, Ric Flair and Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Flair and Wahoo were close friends behind the curtain, but once they started wrestling, it was an all-out war with nothing off limits, including brass knuckles, a broken table leg with a nail sticking out, or wild strap matches. Wahoo and Ric's frequent fights over the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship were box office gold, and that was just the start. When Flair's partner in crime, Greg Valentine, began hunting for Wahoo's title, Flair joined in, leading to more matches with Wahoo and various tag team partners brought in by McDaniel. The feud was revisited in 1984 when Wahoo turned heel, tired of being denied NWA World Heavyweight Championship matches and aligning himself with Tully Blanchard to take out Slick Rick. Number 4. Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper was already making a name for himself when he entered Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, but it was there that he attained national stardom. The timing couldn't have been better, as Flair was now playing a babyface while Piper symbolized the same qualities that had made Flair's heel run so successful. A wily heel with a motor mouth guaranteed to anger fans and babyfaces alike. One legendary segment from their Mid-Atlantic rivalry saw Piper, who was television champion at the time, defeat Flair for the United States Championship. An arrogant Piper gift-wrapped the TV title and presented it to Flair as a consolation gift, adding heat to their already magma-hot program. The two would feud many other times, including a later program in Mid-Atlantic Wrestling where Flair was now a heel and Piper a babyface, and later in the WWF when Flair worked his Real World's champion gimmick and Piper was one of his first opponents. When Piper jumped to WCW, rematches with Flair were inevitable, and although they weren't as good as their previous runs, they still delivered. Number 3. Dusty Rhodes. Several of Ric Flair's greatest feuds involve wrestlers who were on the same side of the coin as him, but Dusty Rhodes was indeed the opposite side of the coin, representing everything Ric Flair wasn't. Flair and Dusty's sporadic clashes in Mid-Atlantic Wrestling during the 1970s suggested just how big their rivalry would be, as they delivered in the ring and on the microphone. The American Dream was more than a wrestling nickname. It epitomized everything about his career following his babyface turn. Dusty was the everyman who fans looked up to, someone who wasn't the prettiest face in the crowd or the most athletic wrestler, despite his ability to work 60-minute Broadways with ease. Instead, he was a gutsy fighter who brooked no insolence from heels, and made fans believe that every night he represented them in the ring against the same forces that made everyday life problematic, whether it was bullies, cheats, or people who flaunted their wealth. Ric Flair was a perfect opponent, as he flaunted his wealth, cheated to keep his title, and bullied opponents with the help of the Andersons, and later the Four Horsemen. The Dusty and Flair feud worked so well because no matter what outrageous act Flair perpetrated or injustice imposed upon Dusty, fans knew it was only a matter of time before Dusty got his revenge. The Dusty vs. Flair feud was a recurring theme in the 1980s, and while it began to run out of gas by the late 1980s, the fact that it lasted so long and did so well for so long shows just how powerful it was. Number 2. Sting. Sting's rivalry with Ric Flair established Sting as a main event player and helped energize Flair's status as WCW's top villain. As much as Jim Crockett Promotions and later WCW needed Ric Flair needed a fresh opponent. Sting had everything Flair needed from a babyface challenger. Someone with an athletic physique, colorful ring attire and makeup to match his bold personality, a fast-paced wrestling style, and a mix of charisma and microphone skills that helped him stand out from the pack. Dusty Rhodes was the perfect foil for Flair during the 1980s. As Flair lived the lifestyle of the rich and famous, Sting continued this fight as the 80s turned into the 90s and forward. Sting caught his break when he crashed Ric Flair Day, challenging Flair for the NWA World title and attacking the Four Horsemen's executive director James J. Dillon after he threw champagne in Sting's face. This led to Sting's engaging encounter with Flair at the first ever Clash of Champions, a 45-minute draw that anointed Sting as the heir apparent to the NWA Championship. From there, things only got better as Sting fought tooth and nail against Flair and the Horsemen, eventually winning the title and repeatedly clashing with Flair until WCW's last episode of Nitro, and even renewing their rivalry in TNA Wrestling in 2011. Number 1. Ricky Steamboat. Ric Flair has often boasted that he's custom made from head to toe. That being said, Ricky Steamboat, one of the few wrestlers to play a babyface throughout their career, was custom made to battle the Nature Boy. Steamboat debuted in Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, presenting fans with a good-looking and athletic grappler to rally behind. To Flair's dismay, his initial program with Steamboat wasn't the box office bonanza he imagined. That changed after an angle where Flair brutalized Steamboat, rubbing his face into the studio floor. Flair delivered a hardway punch to Steamboat to make things look bad. That wasn't all, as Harley Race applied sandpaper to the good-looking babyface, leaving marks that took months to disappear, and convincing fans that Ricky had been pulverized. However, Flair's dirty deed didn't go unpunished. Steamboat returned to TV, attacking Flair while he boasted of his attack against Steamboat. Ricky battered Flair, who was accompanied by 2 good-looking women, then stripped him of his expensive suit before beating him up in the ring. These 2 segments got the fans' attention, and as Flair recalls, "We went back on the road, and from day one we sold out everywhere." More significantly, the feud transformed Steamboat from an up-and-comer into the superstar he deserved to be. The 2 battled across the Mid-Atlantic area, wrestling incredible matches. Indeed, Ric Flair has said that fans who have only seen their televised matches never saw them at their very best, as their house show matches were wrestling clinics. The brutality showed in matches and angles raised the stakes in their feud. This feud heated and cooled just long enough for promoters to stoke the fire again. While Steamboat and Flair's 1989 trilogy over the NWA World Heavyweight Championship remains the duo's most talked about program, there were many others that lit up the ring. What do you think about our list? Are there any feuds missing? Would you like to see more details about these feuds? Share your thoughts in the comment section, and let us know if there's any videos you'd like Wrestling's Greatest Moments to cover. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel, follow us on X and Instagram, and spread the good news about Wrestling's Greatest Moments, the channel that celebrates the squared circle.